Gemini Cup might be over, but that doesn't mean that we have any time to relax. We need to start prepping for Cancer Cup already. The next champions meeting in Uma Musume is a 1,600 meter mile race on the Tokyo racetrack. It is a left-handed race course that will be run during summer with sunny conditions, but only good conditions for the field, not firm, which means that wet conditions will be the green skill you should be looking for in this specific race. There is one big difference now compared to previous champions meetings though, and that is the existence of Seiun Sky, and more importantly, her unique skill, angling and scheming. I'll preface this by saying that if you thought the previous champions meetings were an RNG fest, Cancer Cup is going to be even more so of an RNG fest within the races themselves. That being said though, today I'll go over some of the tips to help you at least try to minimize the RNG and make some Umas that can net you a win in Cancer Cup. There are 2, or I suppose 3, maybe even 4 main types of Umas that you can expect to see in Cancer Cup. The first, of course, is the Oshi horse, or the Horsey. So that's using your favorite Uma as an ace, which is, you know what, 100% a perfectly reasonable option. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Next up, and probably the most dominant type of Uma that you will be seeing, are going to be the frontrunner aces, especially because of the aforementioned Seiun Sky. As a reminder, her unique skill gives a burst of acceleration if you are in first place on a corner during the late race. Unlike the previous Taurus Cup, where redshift was good there, in this track, because the corner already starts in the middle of the race, it's possible to activate redshift during the middle part of the race where you aren't trying to accelerate for the final stretch. Meanwhile, angling and scheming will basically always activate at the exact moment you want to start speeding up for that final stretch. But again, it only activates for the runner in first place. So basically, a lot of races will boil down to who is in first place heading into the final stretch, as they will be the one to activate angling and scheming, extending the lead that they should already have, netting them the win. So, if you are planning on making a frontrunner, your goal should be to make sure that they are in first place no matter what in that final corner, which is a lot easier said than done. Be warned now that trying to make a good frontrunner is incredibly difficult and demanding, and arguably almost whale tier luck only. Starting out of the gate, to make sure that you can get to the front, you'll want a lot of acceleration. So naturally, you'll want a lot of power, but more so, the best way to go about this is by getting the groundwork skill, as well as 3 other skills that activated at the start of the race. So that can be stuff like focus, as well as green skills such as standard distance, or left-handed, sunny days, firm conditions, summer runner. Silent Suzuka is actually nice for this, since she does come innately with left-handed and focus already. Otherwise though, if you thought that trying to get straightaway spurt was difficult for Gemini Cup, imagine trying to inherit a groundwork as well as the 2 or 3 other green skills that you might need if they don't happen to be in your support deck. And then moving past the early race into the mid race, which all happens along that one singular big corner, here is where you will want speed skills as opposed to acceleration. Since now, in the mid-race, everyone should have already in theory accelerated to their desired speeds. You will want speed boosts here because either, if you are not in first place, you will want to try and speed up to push and overtake whoever is in first. Or, if you are already in first place, you want to extend that gap between you and the rest of the pack. This means trying to fish for even more speed skills, such as mile or front-runner corners, tail held high, escape artist, or any of the other mile speed boosts. Notably, the recent Yaino Muteki SSR power card gives a very strong combination of mid-race speed skills in tailed held high, playtimes over, and ramp up. With one other mid-race skill, you can get a big burst of speed helping you to push to the front of the pack. And of course, if your Uma does have a speed boost unique, that will also help out a lot as well. Like for example, Sakura Bakushin O, Daiwa Scarlet, or Smart Falcon, whose skills all activate in the second half of the race, helping them to try and push for the first place spot, leading up to that final corner. So not only will you have to spend all that time battling RNG to get those skills on your Uma, while also getting good stats in the career, odds are other people in Champions Meeting will be doing the same. So it boils down to an RNG on within the race itself to see who actually is able to get first in that corner. Remember, for your frontrunner now, you will not only want enough stamina and guts to meet the thresholds for this race, so that's a roughly 600 stamina and 300 guts, because actually you do get a bit of a speed boost if you meet those specific requirements, but now you also want a lot of speed, a lot of power so you can accelerate, and then also a lot of wit to make sure that you can actually activate those skills. It is a very demanding stat line, on top of a skill line as well. But don't worry, there are other alternatives. The next type of Uma that you can train for Cancer Cup is not as difficult to raise as a frontrunner ace, but it unfortunately is just as RNG heavy, and that is a late serger. Especially since with the recent legend race, everyone should be close to getting a 3-star vodka, and if you've already pulled Grass Wonder once, you can buy out a lot of star pieces from the club shop to get her to 3 stars as well. And the reason why late surgers are an option is because of the amount of acceleration skills available to them. Vodka innately gets Furious Feet at potential 5, Grass Wonder gets On Your Left at potential 5, and then there are the Ogre Cap SSR power card that also gives Furious Feet, or the Winning Ticket Guts card that gives On Your Left. And then there's stuff like Fighter or Outer Swell, and you can also even inherit skills like Major Orion's Pump Some Iron, or even Redshift, since for a late surger, you might only fulfill the well-positioned part of Redshift once you do actually enter the late race part, as opposed to a frontrunner using Redshift. And now with a late surger as well, you won't have to compete about being in first place there to battle for angling and scheming priority. The real issue, however, though, and why being a late surger is still a gamble, is that although you don't have to be in first place, the actual activation timings of these skills that I mentioned could screw you over. For example, both On Your Left and Furious Feet activate at a random point during the late race. So it is entirely possible that they activate way too late for your late surger to even catch up. Now, not only do you want a lot of acceleration skills on your late surger to, hopefully have some of them proc, you actually need a lot of these acceleration skills to activate. Because remember, in theory, you are trying to catch up to a frontrunner who just activated angling and scheming and is barreling down that final stretch. So as a late surger, you are essentially starting out way further back. So you need to catch up to that frontrunner fast. So it's not a matter of buying several acceleration skills, hoping that one of them will activate. You need pretty much all of them to activate if you want to catch up and compete with an angling and scheming frontrunner. And then of course, the biggest gamble of running a late surger, especially when there are going to be so many frontrunners in races potentially speaking, is you will always be gambling on whether or not you are going to get blocked. Now, that being said though, speaking of getting blocked, what if we could take getting blocked and use that to our advantage? And that brings us to our last type of Uma that you can make for Champions Meeting. And that is still another frontrunner, but one who will purposefully try to block the other frontrunners, giving your other late surgers an easier time winning, since now they will not have to compete with an angling and scheming frontrunner. So maybe they can get away with not activating every single one of those acceleration skills, making it a bit less gambly. If you are struggling to make an actual ace frontrunner, you can consider trying out a blocking frontrunner instead. To do this, you'll focus all in on making an Uma who can maintain first place, but doesn't actually do anything once they make it to the final stretch. By doing this, you firstly prevent anybody else from activating angling and scheming, but also by slowing down to a near stop in the final stretch, you further prevent them from advancing, causing a huge block that in theory, your late surgers who should be swinging wide on the final corner will be able to pass with ease. Now, how do you go about making this blocker? First, you have to choose an Uma, of course. The most popular ones will be Umas with mid-race speed boost uniques, since, as mentioned earlier, this helps them push to the front. This means those like Smart Falcon and Buckshin are great for this, although you may need to work a bit for the turf sparks to upgrade Smart Falcon to a usable turf aptitude, which you should be doing anyway, since you ideally want to get your turf aptitude to S, as that will increase their acceleration. Now, speaking of acceleration, that is pretty much all we care about on our blocker. So you want your power to be as high as possible so that you can have as much natural acceleration out of the gate, and you also want your wit to be as high as possible to activate as many skills as you need to maintain the lead. Naturally, you'll want the same types of skills as the ace frontrunners. So that will be a groundwork combo to get a burst of acceleration at the start, as well as a mid-race speed boost combo. Now, like I said, you only really care about power and wit on this blocker. Believe it or not, your speed stat actually does not matter. The speed stat is only used during the final stretch to calculate how fast your spurt is. It will not have an impact on any point in the race leading up to that point. As an example of how a blocker can work, although it's not the exact same setup, the other day on stream I somehow made a front-running groundwork Simboli Rudolph, and so we had a fun race to try her out. And you can actually see the concept of the blocker in action. Right out of the gate, she activates groundwork to push to the front, and then in the middle part of the race, there are some mid-race speed boosts that help her maintain the lead into the final corner. Now, this stops any of the other frontrunners in the race from activating their angling and scheming, and actually does cause a bit of a block up, letting an end closer and a late surger who swung wide getting first and second. Now, unfortunately, as with all things, running a blocker is also a gamble, since it is entirely possible that you could also block your own late surger, or that somehow the other frontrunners actually manage to get in first place. But again, with the near max power and width that you will have, as well as mid-race speed boosts, ideally you should be able to maintain the lead on a blocker. Now, although I've only been talking about frontrunners and late surgers, again, there is nothing wrong with running your horseshoe, but just note that other strategies have a bit of a tougher time because they have less acceleration options available to them in comparison to late surgers. And also, those acceleration skills that they do have are less consistent than simply being in first for the frontrunners. Otherwise though, just remember that at the end of the day, all of this prep is simply to minimize the RNG of the champions meeting races. It really will be a potshot of who activates their skills when, which honestly, I'm kind of excited to see. The race being only 1,600 meters means that I think actively watching the races will be a lot more fun, instead of in Gemini Cup where 90% of the race didn't matter and it was just seeing which gold ship spurted on that final corner. Now instead, you have to watch to see who maintains the lead up until that final corner, and even then, you still have to keep an eye out for the late surges to see if they high roll on their acceleration skills. But otherwise though, those are the different types of Umas that you can make for the upcoming Cancer Cup. Your options are to go with the quote-unquote whale tier frontrunner, the whale killer blocker, or to go gambling on a late surger, or to just have fun and use your favorites. Whichever path you choose to take, I wish you all the best of luck in your runs, and hopefully a win in the next champions meeting. Until next time though, bye bye!